Word the One.
One. The
The
perfection of love,
love,
harmony and beauty, the only being, united with all the illuminated souls, who form the embodiment of the messenger,
the spirit of guidance.
So welcome, dear ones. It's great to be with you. And I already said something about a surprise. Well, look who's sitting next to me. Azerbaij decided that he would like to sit in, especially because our book is now finished and in fact available. You might have heard the word about that. So it's kind of opened up time and space for him and for us to be together. So I'm glad you're here, sweetheart.
And the book is called Awakening as a Human Divine Being, and you can get it through xlibris.com or amazon.com or barnesandnoble.com.
And that will answer some of the concerns that I had, and maybe that some of you had, that we'd really want to hear again some of the things that we had talked about, and you know, to really ground what it is that we can do as a human divine being. And so a lot of that will be available in the book. However, this is an opportunity for all of us to ground this in a different kind of way. I will be open to questions and comments during our last half hour, where you can say more about what you'd like to hear, and we'll respond to that for the next time. And a few of you have given ideas to us for this class, so we'll be basing what we're doing on that. So we can begin. We have had time to unfold many different topics and blessings and practices. And one of the ideas that we've been working with quite a bit is the Imaginal Realm. Thinking about this part of who we are, sometimes we think of as our dream self, that somehow we're thinking, we spoke a lot about the Barzakh, and that there is a realm that is the interface between all the different parts of who we are. That's something to do with the Imaginal Realm. But sometimes we get the feeling that it's really a dream place somewhere other than where we are. And the person that had this comment was saying that they had a hard time accessing this Imaginal Realm. So we're going to talk somewhat more about that today, along with some other things. So let's begin. So it's not a place that's far away and alien from where we are, and it is not just a place of dream. And it is not necessarily a place of angels, colors, apparitions, things like that to hold in the mind. But it is really, first of all, we are using the imaginal faculty when we just go through our normal day, in our usual truncated state, as we sometimes call it, because we parcel things in certain kinds of ways. A lot of the time repeating the same things, the same activities, the same way of thinking about things, same way of thinking about ourselves, one day after the other. And a lot of this is very repetitive, and our souls are really not enjoying this very much. So we can do this, so we can use the imaginal in a different kind of way then, using some of the things that we've been speaking about, including how connected everything is, how the human divine idea I think of as the realm of the heart, that we are connecting with so many different kinds of beings, times, places, and that what we do in our daily life is forming a space, an interface between all of those places and all of those times with our presence. in the light of the divine. In other words, I think of it as the Svarna in the Zoroastrian tradition. There, it's all linked through Svarna, and it takes our awareness and our glance and our welcoming to activate this connection. So, for example, yesterday, simplest thing in the world, there was a little piece of paper, just tiniest thing on the floor, and I bent over and I picked it up. Wow, that certainly is not mind-blowing to be doing something like that. But when I did it, I thought about all those in my world and other times, those I loved, you all. And I thought of all of the cycles of nature. I thought of all of the realms of beings. And that in doing this one act, I was hopefully adding to the care that is given to all, by all beings. So that is a use of the imaginal faculty. See how different it is than inventing things and thinking about other places. It is a realigning of who we are and thinking, oh yes, the Mawjud, that the divine is aware and in my life in this moment right now. And I have some choices as to how to think about things. We'll be speaking about where our minds usually are and what we can do about that. But here's just one little thing to offer. You can jump in?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times we think about awakening as a process to get to someplace else other than where we are. And the problem is not where we are, the problem is where we think we are or where we perceive we are. So what our perception is usually doing is limiting us to a very narrow realm of function and being, and we're trying to get to a different place. And we're trying to raise, so to speak, what we think of as ourselves, which is this limited structure in this constricted reality. We're trying to take that and move it to some higher reality, like send it up on the elevator. Well, that doesn't work, and you've probably discovered to your frustration that that doesn't work, because if you've ever had a transcendent experience, you are definitely not experiencing your usual self in some different realm of being. You are experiencing a totally different state of being. And when you came back from that, you probably thought, oh, you know, I went to such and such place. That was wonderful. Now I'm back here. But in actuality, you never left the place that you were in. You just were temporarily able to access a part of the realm in which your being exists all the time, but it was dormant for you. So this is important to realize, because otherwise we're setting ourselves up for a whole lot of frustration, trying to grit our teeth and use the force of willpower to move ourselves to some other place. And what's needed is to relax, to allow, to open to the reality of what actually is. And we've covered this many times in the previous classes. That requires a letting go, sometimes a shattering of your previously identified ways of being and perceiving, because those are not the reality of who you are.
Mm-hmm. So here we are. And sometimes we think, well, I don't think I can remember all those places and times. I can't mentally push myself out to those or bring all those into me as individual places. And it's, I'm trying to enumerate them to you even, and it's hard to, well, we don't need to be doing that. I love how you said this, Azerbaijan, just relaxing into it, opening into it, because all of those beings that are in all those realms, and even yourself in different moments, are really willing to be an amazing help to this process. So it really does take just a relaxing into that and realizing an ease of the pushing, ease of the single push and tug that happens when we are in linear kind of perspective. I think that's one reason I love nature so much, and I'm sure that you all have experienced this, that it seems when we're out in nature, there's so many little pockets of life and so many designs, patterns, I would say, of which we seem to feel ourselves a part when we are in nature. And that's what I'm talking about is rather than listing all these different beings that we are uniting with or places that we're uniting with, just easing into this familiarity that's like harmonizing with everything around us, that brings us into the state where we're beyond the push and pull and tug and trying to assert ourselves.
And what's an important property to have in this process is a confidence that even if you haven't yet experienced it or have only, excuse me, temporarily experienced much more of who you are, the confidence that that is all there, that you will discover how to awaken to the reality of who you are and how you are and where you are. I mean, the world that you are actually in. And if you have that confidence, then it's much easier just to open and allow to a shift in your perception to be able to experience something that's there but couldn't be perceived by the usual senses. It requires a perception by the subtle senses of our being, which we all have, but they get drowned out by the input of physical reality, and they get drowned out by the concepts we have that we don't think about, that's all that there is. I mean, people don't usually think, well, there's no more to the world than what I see, hear, feel, touch, smell, taste, and so on. They just take that as, well, of course, that's a given. That's ridiculous. Why would I even waste time thinking about that? But it's that collective consciousness that that's all there is that keeps so many people stuck. And then if they have a different type of experience, they may think, well, that was a hallucination, or, well, I don't know where that came from. That's not me, or I couldn't have that experience again. I got to stop dreaming. I got to get back to reality. Only what they don't realize is the reality that they are getting back to is not reality at all. It's a limitation of consciousness. It's like in a sense, a force field of consciousness that's been self-erected around ourselves that keeps us from perceiving anything more than what we think is possible within that field.
So what do we have already that helps us to awaken, to come to this state where we are feeling more of the divine in the human? Well, of course, our practices. We have many ways of resonating, perhaps you might say, or using these sacred words, which have a connection again to many beings. And there have been, this is very good for the imaginal realm for sure. If you remember back to the class where I spoke about using the eyes of love and perceiving with those eyes of love, and then having the heart that is united with the divine, and then having the hands, one of them that is holding as if you're thinking of the things that you have learned, that you can do, that you can contribute. And then the other hand opened out the other way in receiving from the world the gifts and the ways that people have learned in many different traditions that you are receiving from the world. So this if you use your dream body, as we've worked with before, for example, in the practice of the symbol where you imagine wings, in this case, you're imagining um, your eyes of love. Now, this has to do with also with kindness, with compassion, and using those eyes and perceiving in every way that you do perceive. And remembering that as we progress as spiritual beings, we acquire a certain power to our glands, power to what we see. And so if we're critical, then it makes the situation much worse. All of us do that. All of us have relationships in which we perhaps say, oh, they should be doing this, or that I should be doing this, or, this little scratchy kind of criticism can be very forceful as we are progressing spiritually. So we really need to be careful and work with it. And that's one of the reasons why kindness is essential to so many spiritual traditions. Sometimes that is the main word, the main wazifa that's used is kindness, which is Ya Karim, by the way. So a practice that you could do at the beginning of every day to use that imaginal faculty would be to imagine that you have these eyes of love that are going to be letting people be at ease, thinking of them as progressing on their paths, that some of the things that they even do may be hurtful, but that that there's all these potentials around them. Now go back to the way you see nature, that all these beautiful patterns and all this energy is all around every one of us. And the more that you imagine these beings with the energy around them, then the more that they'll be able to perceive it too. So here's a great use of the imaginal, to be thinking that these eyes, as they look at things and beings around us and ourselves in the mirror, we're thinking these opening thoughts and kind thoughts. And so when you do your practices, you could say Ya Karim and add that to what you do. Then the next, thinking of the heart. You think of your heart as a place which is in the crucible of this human divine transformation. So what does this mean? You all have your ways that you feel closest to God, and you feel closest to this other way of looking at things besides the truncated version. And you can, I'd call that the sandbox in some of the classes before. Maybe you being with friends, or you being in your art studio, you making music, and you remembering that part and putting your attention into that place, using that imaginal faculty in that way. And in this one, you could use the divine word Ya Mawjud, Ya Mawjud, which means making the divine a reality. In fact, making the divine a reality in your own perception. And then the third part of this would be to think of your hands. So again, we've thought about our eyes. We do this in the morning. Think about your heart. Think about your hands. And you're thinking of mastery, first of all, that you're thinking of those things that you have accomplished in your business, in your relating to others, and that you're dedicating these things to everyone. That we're not just relinquishing our beingness and saying, oh, you, God, and not me. In the Sufi tradition, we are human divine. And so we have things that we're offering that we have learned. We're not losing those. And then on the other hand, it is this opening to all the possibilities in the world that are around us that we learn from. Maybe trying something different or looking at it in a different kind of way, challenging ourselves. So we think of our eyes, we think of our heart, we think of our hands. And this would be a way of using the imaginal. You can do that right now. Think of those different parts of yourself and dedicating those parts of yourself, even in the midst of your world. That's an offering.
So another way of thinking about the imaginal faculty, rather than thinking of it as something we do with our eyes closed when we're sitting in meditation, it's what enables us to make a shift in our vantage point, in our perception. And we've talked so many times over the course of our classes about everything being a portal or an opening to the sacred. And we've talked about being in difficult situations and seeing those situations in a new light, seeing what quality is being called for in us to come through, and allowing that to emerge that results in that situation, instead of being a constriction that causes further limitation and separation, it becomes the means of opening and a deeper connection. And we have the capacity to do that all the time, especially when we recognize that we've gotten caught up in the previous state of being, which is one of limitation. And we've talked many times about the essential Sufi practice, the zikr, which means remembrance. And we think usually of remembrance as remembering something that happened. I think of it more as remembering what is, remembering who we are and how we are, and allowing that to emerge in the situation. So in these classes, I think we're going to be coming back and revisiting many principles that we've been through many, many times, and hopefully being able to find ways to put them to practical use in our daily life. To be able to, we talk about coming to the barzakh, the interface, the meeting place, the two sides of our being, the human and divine coming together, and what arises from that, what arises that can only come from those two sides. Well, that's the essence of everything we've been trying to share in these classes, that we can come to a state of being where that's an ongoing experience, that emergence that happens. And sometimes we experience it as the manifest and transcendent parts of ourselves coming together and something coming from that. And perhaps more often, we experience it as that, what we've called relational unity, our way of connecting with a person, a circumstance, the environment that isn't separated, we're not merged in it, but now there's a continuous interchange and circulation of light and energy, and something arises from that continuously. So our whole state of being potentially can become one in which there's this ongoing process of emergence of new creation that we're participating in. And then the question that you're probably thinking, well, how on earth do I do that? You know, that sounds like so far down the road, or I could never do that. Well, of course you can do that, but it involves many, many, many bite-sized pieces of making that shift in how we're experiencing what's happening. And even listening to us sharing these teachings in the class tonight, if you can feel that, yeah, we're in many different locations around the country, but on another level, we're just totally interconnected with each other. And there is a collective field of consciousness from all of us watching this and participating in this. And even perhaps more remarkable, there's a collective field of consciousness of those people that won't watch this perhaps for a month or two down the road, who just stumble on it on YouTube, but that has an impact on what's happening right now. So again, we have the opportunity to free our perception from being stuck in the vantage point of linear time and recognizing ourselves as spanning across multiple times and influencing and being influenced by things taking place in multiple times, both in manifestation, but also beyond this realm. that time that can't be measured in the usual way.
So you brought up the idea about a zikr. So here's one of those challenges. If you would accept it, do kind of a zikr having to do with what you were just explaining.
Okay, well, give me a moment here.
Okay.
Okay, well, here's one. Many of us are part of a Sufi order called the Inayatiya, and others perhaps have your own spiritual paths that might be part of some particular group. Might be that you just have an affinity for a particular transmission throughout the centuries, whether it be Christianity or Buddhism or Judaism and so on. So what I'd like for you to do is to feel, recall the motions of the zikr. The head's in 3/4 of a circle, left shoulder down, right shoulder and up. And then the head goes down to the solar plexus and then back up to the heart. So just try the motions. Left shoulder down, right shoulder up, down to the solar plexus, up to the heart. And what I want you to feel as your head goes around in the 3/4 of a circle is that you are joining in on this practice that beings have engaged in through the centuries, through whatever transmission that you feel an affinity for. And now you're adding your own unique transmission to that. It's like adding a melody to a symphony that's playing. So just feel as the head goes in the circle that you're adding your own vibration to the vibrations of all these beings that have been practicing this throughout the centuries. And you're feeling that connection. And now as the head goes downwards, you're feeling that the divine being is now able to experience much more of him herself in manifestation through you and through the fruits of all of these other beings, through this collective transmission that you're now a part of. And so the divine is experiencing the awareness throughout all the realms of existence, this flavor that's been added to these vibrations. And now as the head comes up, you experience what's been enabled in the new creation that is brought forth. And this new creation isn't just happening in what you think of as now, in this moment, on this day, at this particular time, but this new creation is happening throughout all times, past, present, future, and even outside of time, ordinary time. And so it's the new creation emerging and being experienced by our human divine being. And so this is that Maoju, this is that making God a reality, and it's the living expression of divinity, now able to experience the living emergence of itself throughout all of existence, what's been added to it. So once again, it goes in the circle. No particular words with this. You're feeling this transmission that you're a part of, that you're adding to. As the head goes downwards, you're feeling the experience of the divine being partaking of now what's become available through all of the different realms from this transmission. And as the head comes back up, you're experiencing the new creation now that could only happen from the collective input of all the beings part of this transmission and the divine being coming together in the Barzakh, in the meeting place, what arises from that. So just do this silently at your own rate. And if you want to put breathing with it, you exhale as the head goes in 3/4 of a circle slowly. And start inhaling as the head goes down. Continue inhaling as the head comes up, and just pause briefly, just a little bit, and then do the next round with the exhalation. Exhale in 3/4 of a circle. Start inhaling as the head goes down. Continue inhaling as the head goes up. Pause briefly and do this several times now at your own rate. And then let go of the motion and even the thoughts, and now just experience what's been brought forth from this practice.
It's wonderful. So now let's talk a bit about what we have thought of as how we would like to be and how we usually are. Especially in this case that we said before that we tend to get in the same path, the same kinds of things over and over, thinking separated kinds of thoughts. Oh gosh, I'm doing that. Maybe not right now, maybe you're not. But next time that you start doing those things, first of all, remember the eyes of kindness, looking at yourself with the eyes of kindness, and also knowing something I'm about to tell you. And that is that it just takes a moment of this consciousness being beyond the usual, that I hope I can express this so it makes sense, that okay, let's say that you are looking at a family that seems to be, so much tugging and pulling and difficulties and all that, but somehow you come from this place of this eyes of kindness, and you are feeling that connection with so much that Azarbash was just explaining to us. It's almost like as if you had a certain kind of oil that would, instead of all the pushing and pulling in all the different directions, would slip everything back into this symphony, into this unity in back of all of it, that perhaps the people that are involved in cannot feel right away, but they might feel something. It's just that moment of realization that we get to every once in a while that has great implication. It goes way beyond adding up all the moments and saying, oh, there was one moment in there that I had this beautiful consciousness. But it provides the slippage, just by way of saying this, that things can relax back into just for a moment, that they actually receive all the light from all the different directions, you could say. The Svarna is complete, that they might not even have seen you at all, but somehow something is relaxed in that moment, and everything is as it should be, could be, will be. So the pressure's off for us to say, oh, we are supposed to be getting somewhere, and we're not, we're usually in this other state of mind. There are those moments, and I see laughing going on. I love it, Jennifer, that the joy and feeling that, and knowing that perhaps you're not even the one that's feeling this. Maybe it's you said something to a friend and they get into that place, and then that brings realization in their atmosphere. There's really no way of writing and scripting how this is going to go. But I think the beginning of it for me usually is that the compassion, the eyes of kindness, looking at my own being and saying, it's okay, you're right on their edge. This is going to be beautiful.
Well, let's talk about the times when perhaps you get down on yourself and you just feel like, and having all these negative thoughts about yourself. And then you're thinking, well, I'm on this path of spiritual awakening, so I want to take this battered image of how I believe that I am and take it into the body shop and get it fixed up and changed into becoming something else. So I'm going to engage in these practices that I hope will do something to what I think of as me. So imagine if you are identified with something that's not the actuality of your being, but it's become such a firm construction, like a hologram, so to speak, and you're trying to repair the hologram, trying to change it into something else, and it keeps breaking down. And you go, oh God, this is hopeless. No way I can do anything about this. But the reason that it's hopeless is that the premise is faulty, that you think that that's you, that you're going to turn into something else, when in actuality, what you're awakening to is this relationship between your manifest identity and all the rest of yourself, which we can call your transcendent self, your personal Lord, your personal angel, and you're awakening to this relationship that brings about naturally an unfoldment of your being. So there's so much talk in spiritual traditions about what to do with the ego, the little e. In some traditions, it's annihilated, stomp it out, it's no good. It's going to keep you from getting to what you want to get to. And others, it's just kind of polish it up and improve it. And there's nothing wrong with self-improvement. I'm not saying that at all. But I think the inherent problem is thinking that the outcome can ever be something that's going to happen to that limited identification that you have with yourself, that you're going to turn into something else by some spiritual path, practices, and so on. And in actuality, the change takes place when temporarily you forget about that, or something shatters your awareness of that. And now there's an opening, there's an accommodation and a space for something different to emerge. And we've talked about fana, annihilation, baka, rebirth, resurrection, and so on. But as Ibn Arabi says, you never lose who you are. Fana is not a destruction of something that is true. It's a freeing from a misidentification with a perception of self and a perception of your relationship to what you think of as the world and what you think of as the divine. And to me, that one shift, if you can get to that shift away from that into it's you and your divine part on this journey together, coming to an awakening and an evolution of the relationship of the two sides, you're going to save yourself years of grief and frustration. And it will open doors for transformation to happen in ways that you probably previously could not imagine.
I'm going to push you a little more on that because it's such a good topic. Just in relation to, so I hear what to not do. Can you say a little bit more what to
What to do?
What to do?
Well, Pure Light would say, dare you have the courage to be who you really are. And it's hard for us to acknowledge or accept the reality of the incredible beings that we are. Part of that is we're taught to be humble and meek, and we don't want to get into, oh, hey, look at me, I'm better than everybody else. That you don't want that. You want an awareness of everything is better than what you thought it was, and everything is an expression of divinity with something unique to offer to all the rest of it. And you get to that by recognizing when you're stuck. That's the starting point. But then recognizing, well, what's the remedy for being stuck? The remedy is realizing there's much more to this situation than what I'm currently perceiving. I'm reacting to something. I'm judging something. I'm thinking of so and so in such a way that causes me to push away from them. And then, as Pure Light would say, well, how can I see what transpires behind the surface appearance of things? What are some other possibilities here? Well, one possibility is this is an aspect of divinity seeking to emerge, and you are needed. Uncle God needs you to open to an awareness that allows something to come through that can't be pushed through God's side of things. Remember the screen, Bekenstein's bound, the limitation of what can come through either side. And when we awaken to our capacity of being multidimensional beings, much more can come through. Well, even apart from that, this new creation that we keep talking about can't happen without our participation. And our participation, we can't get in the door, so to speak, unless we let go of the sense of separation, unless we let go of feelings of unworthiness, unless we let go of thinking that we're just the way we always have thought of ourselves, as opposed to, well, I haven't experienced what they're talking about, but gee, they've written a book. Maybe they know something about what they're talking about. But maybe there's more to me than I thought. And I'm going to take it as a hypothesis. And I can tell them, I told you so. If I try it and nothing works. Okay. You can get your money back for all these classes that you've watched. Well, in fact, we'll double what you paid for them. But if you try it, then I am confident. You can have some extra confidence from me because I've never seemed to be lacking in confidence for things. That
True.
That everyone who's listening to this is an incredible emergent manifestation of divinity through humanness in relationship with divinity in life, which is the whole purpose of creation, to enable what can come through that could not otherwise come through. And there is nothing, I'll say it again, I've said it many times, there is nothing that's not a portal to the sacred, no matter how horrible it seems to be. And that's not saying, well, everything's wonderful. There are obviously some just horrible, unacceptable situations that we need to try to do something about. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying our way of relating to what we're experiencing. And Pure Light would tell the story about a Black woman who was being lynched. I don't know if this was in the early 1900s or whatever in the South. And she said, you can do what you want to my body, but you can't touch my soul. And she knew that. She knew they could not touch her soul, that that aspect of herself was so far beyond anything that external hatred could affect or reach, that we have something that is so precious that existence is longing to see in each of us, that unique aspect of divinity that can only come from each one of us. And if we realize that we have that, once again, even if we go, well, I don't know how to let it come out. Well, you do in many ways. You know how to let it come out when you open up instead of close down in situations. You know how to do it when you see a light in someone who seems so dark because they've forgotten who they are. They maybe never have discovered that, but you see past what they can see and you recognize, well, here's another living expression of divinity in a state of awakening. And you can't shake them awake. You can't, say, well, just do this and this and that. You're being yourself. You're not trying to put a trip on anybody. You're not trying to convert anybody. Murshid Hazrat Khan would say spirituality is all about becoming a natural human being. A natural human being. And so when you recognize that you're not being a natural human being, well, just stop being unnatural. There.
There. Thank you. Wonderful. Yes. And so we have our proof in our life. We look and see what things are going on around us, and that's proof to us that we're not doing very well a lot of the time. Well, I have to tell you, we have our air conditioner doesn't work downstairs. We have a very difficult situation here where we have, 95-degree temperatures, and we have terrible humidity, and so things are goofed up over here. And this is proof that we're doing something wrong. Or how about us thinking, well, we're getting quite old here, and we've been on the spiritual path a long time, and I don't know what's, it hasn't happened yet. You're talking about this moment, but I'm not sure we're getting to that moment. That seems like some kind of proof there. Or so many things lately we could say, oh my gosh, I guess I'm not doing something right because things are looking pretty bad. That's definitely one of those things that we need to refresh and know that was it Ramana Maharshi that was so sick for so many years near the end of his life, cancer, and oh my, so many difficult situations arise, and it's definitely not proof that things are not going the way that they need to go. And even like I was saying about these moments, we get to these moments, but then we seem to go totally down the other way and are in the midst of torturous situations. None of these are proof, or even feeling that everything's going so well. That might seem like everything's doing very well, and we might be isolating ourselves from situations that we really need to be looking at. So the external is not a very good way of looking at how we're doing. Azurbash had many things to say in regard to that. This is one way that I'm saying is not the way to analyze things, and I think it kind of goes with the using your eyes too. Thinking about your eyes might not be seeing the things the way that they're not the thing, looking beyond what appears. There's something beyond what appears. And even if you're not seeing that, just having that confidence and memory of those places where you did push through and see that can be your judge, can be your way of holding yourself and thinking. There is an inner way of seeing all this. You want to add anything to that?
Yeah, one of my favorite things that Hazrat Inayat Khan said was that every atom will have its moment of awakening. And so the way I relate to that is, well, we're made out of countless atoms. So if every atom in me is going to have its moment of awakening, then that must mean so am I, because I'm a conglomerate of lots of these little creatures. And he also says that there's no desire, and he's talking about true desire, that won't be fulfilled. If not in this life, then beyond, afterwards. And everything will eventually awaken. But
Here's that confidence again, too, everybody.
okay,
He always
but
has it.
It says in yoga, and I think it says in Buddhism, that, I mean, the paths that believe in reincarnation, that to have a human life is very rare, and that it's much, much easier to make spiritual progress in human form than afterwards. Certainly progress, we have all the eons we need after we leave this world to make progress, but we can make so much more progress here. So the Sufis say, well, die before death and resurrect now. You know, what our book is all about, the resurrection body. Well, why wait till after you die to experience and enjoy a perfectly good resurrection body? You might as well get some mileage out of it while you're here, and have some practice in being able to live from that. Because once you discover how to do that, then it doesn't matter what realm your existence is taking place in. You'll never lose that. You'll always have that way of relationship, regardless of the vehicle. This is a vehicle. Our body is a vehicle. Our jinn body, Mercer says, after we die, is the next vehicle. Then with our angelic body, well, all those bodies are co-present, but our consciousness tends to be harbored in one or the other. But regardless of which one that we're in, this way of relationship, this way of connecting with whatever realm is the manifest for us, with whatever is transcendent to that realm, and whatever emerges from that connection between the two, that's an ongoing process that never ends. There's no end. And even Arby says that there's a new creation at every instance, yes, but he also says, and I love this, it never repeats. It's never the same. It's similar to what's been before, but it's never identical. And he says that everything in existence is unique also. There's no two beings that are the same.
So I'm going to temper what I said a little bit earlier, a little bit, and say you can't really tell by looking at things on the outside. But something that we have been learning more about is how to see what's on the inside. And you know, as Azarbash is saying, these great beings have spoken, and to have some confidence and trust in those great beings for guiding us on this path. And we'll speak some more too in these other classes about the Barzakh some more, and about how do you see with these inner eyes, a little bit more, that a little bit more, what do we say in the alchemical process? It's annealed, that has formed and continues, that we can see that the Svarna, the light rising within ourselves, in spite of what it looks like on the outside.
You say it's made adamant.
That's it.
Doesn't turn back to what it was before.
Mhm. I think that's it for tonight.
Okay, so
Now we have our half hour of interaction.